Always good to have you join us. This is Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television, and we're reaching you live from our headquarters in Lagos. I am Bukola Koka, and here are our top stories. Edo State Assembly is inaugurated as Honorable Blessing Agbekabo emerges Speaker of 8th Assembly. 2 days after losing the Senate presidency seat, Senator Abdulaziz Yari alleges betrayal by his colleagues. And following the impasse in the outcome of the Nasarawa State Assembly's speakership election, 3 lawmakers defect to the governor's faction, bringing their number to 14. Thank you for joining us. There is no room for complaints and excuses. Strong words from the president as he inaugurated the National Economic Council on Thursday, where he promised to sustain the rejuvenation of the nation's economy. Addressing members of the council, made up of state governors, President Bola Tinubu challenged the council to join forces with his administration towards transforming the nation and stimulating serious growth. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umeziuki, also reports that the president met with former heads of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, and other visitors at the villa.
Members of the National Economic Council, comprising the chairman, Vice President Kashim Shettima, 36 state governors, the acting governor of the central bank, and other top government officials converge at the council chamber minutes before the president Bola Tinubu arrives to inaugurate the council. This is his second official meeting with the governors after his election, and he's seeking their collaboration to sustain the progress that he has made.
This government will continue to transform our nation's fortunes and bring about unprecedented development through good governance. We are committed to sustainable initiatives and programs that will stimulate the rejuvenation of the economy without causing inflation. Collaboration is not a crime. Please let us do so.
The president subsequently inaugurates the council while reminding members of the expectations of Nigerians.
It is also evident that the task of growing our economy is quite enormous. But you and I ask for it. We campaign for it. We even dance for it. We beg for it. So we have no reason to complain. We must harness the growth potential of Nigeria. And you have the flexibility of using the local government to rapidly develop the infrastructure within the local government areas.
The president shortly after meets with Nigeria's former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar.
Nigeria, there is enough for everybody. So let us try to be each other's keeper and also put our own hands on deck to move the country forward. You know, this subsidy issue has been on and off and so on. But Mr. President has taken a decision to remove it, and I hope we will all see how to help him to make sure that it succeeds.
For the second time, President Tinubu meets the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who is accompanied by his deputy, Senator Barau Jibrin, in his office.
The Parliament on resumption will also lend our voice to what we have seen so far. He has taken the right steps. The stock market is rising, and a lot of people are very excited with the steps he has taken so far, and we are also very happy. And there is renewed hope, not just in terms of the economy, but in terms of the stability of the country.
More visitors arrived at State House, including the 14th Emir of Kano and former governor of the Central Bank, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. His visit is coming almost a week after the president suspended Mr. Godwin Emeiele as the governor of the Apex Bank.
I came to thank him for the steps he has taken to put this economy on course. As you know, many of the issues that we have been talking about, the subsidy that has caused a hemorrhage on the fiscus, the multiple exchange rate regimes, and so on, these are issues that I have personally been talking about for a long time. And I'm happy that on his very first day, he has addressed these issues and the markets are happy. And it is important when the government does the right thing.
As the president's cabinet continues to take shape, expectations are also burgeoning that the president will address critical challenges, including power and education, among others contained in the 8 priority areas of his administration. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The National Economic Council has set up an ad hoc committee and given it 2 weeks to look into 2 scenarios suggested by the National Salaries, Wages and Income Commission on how to alleviate the suffering faced by Nigerian workers following the removal of fuel subsidy. A statement from the Office of the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, notes that at the first NEC meeting chaired by the Vice President, the Council's inauguration by President Bola Tinubu, the chairman of the commission, Mr. Ekpo Nta, suggested that the national minimum wage be reviewed to reflect present-day realities and a cost of living adjustment allowance be created to mitigate the impact of the subsidy removal on workers. NEC also gave an update on the country's accounts, noting that the excess crude stands at 473.754.56 billion naira, stabilization account 26.6 billion naira, while the natural resources fund stands at 96.9 billion naira. In the meantime, the president has named 8 of his special advisors, and they are Mr. Dele Alake, who is the president's special advisor on special duties, communications and strategy. Former EFCC chairman, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, is special advisor on security, while Mr. Yo Darazo is the special advisor, political and intergovernmental affairs. Others named are Mr. Wale Edun, who steps in as special advisor, monetary policies, Mrs. Oluvejen, special advisor on energy, while Mr. Zacchaeus Adedeji is to advise the president on revenue. Mr. John Uwajumogu is the special advisor on industry, trade and investment, and Dr. Salma Anas is special advisor on health. All appointments are with immediate effect, and just before it rounded off its season, the Senate will have that story subsequently. And joining me now to discuss the decisions made by the president in the first 3 weeks of being in office is a policy analyst and anti-corruption activist and the executive secretary of Human and Environmental Developmental Agenda Resource Center, Mr. Sulaiman Arigbabu. Thank you for joining us on Lunchtime Politics today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, let's start with the first few policy decisions of Mr. President in the first 3 weeks of being in office. How are you receiving these decisions already reverberating in the polity?
Thank you. It's interesting. His first decision was to confirm the removal of the fuel subsidy, albeit even falling short of the extra 1 month that the previous administration purportedly had budgeted for. The removal of the subsidy was quite surgical. Many of us agree that somehow, whatever it is they call the subsidy needed to go. But then there were things that government needed, because the way it has been done is as if Mr. President Bola Tinubu, decided to punish the citizens for the failings of government. And that's what it seems like. Whereas we agree that it should go, there are a lot of things that needed to be put in place. So who would have advocated that some buffer, some time, some few months should be allowed, and then certain things in place, such as subsidizing transportation. I mean, during the Naira cash shortage, The Lagos State government subsidized its buses. These are some of the low-hanging fruit that government could tell state governors, to go into. You could also help us to convene a meeting between citizens, government, and transport service providers, because they are quite very indiscriminate in their increments whenever there is a distortion in any situation in the policy. So that was quite harsh. And then, of course, the policy about unifying the exchange rates, that is still unfolding. I won't claim to be an expert on that, but I'm just afraid that it will not cause undue inflation. And then he decided to suspend Mr. Emeiele, and the DSS has arrested him. I have a mixed feeling about that. I have absolutely no sympathy for Mr. Emeiele.
Suspension
he deserved
of henchmen of key institutions. Let's quickly follow up on those policy decisions, the floating of the naira, and of course the removal of fuel subsidy. The NEC has charged the National Income Salaries and Wages Commission to review the minimum wage, to mitigate the impact of fuel subsidy. But, the conversation following Labour taking up this charge was how representative, this would be, considering that the workforce cuts across and is, in fact, beyond federal and state civil service workers. So how will these plan, by the government, the CNG is also there, how will it be implemented such that, the impact will flow down to other workers beneath the rung of the ladder?
So quickly, the CNG is one thing that we thought could have been put in place before the eventual removal of the subsidy. It would have helped. Now, coming to increment in minimum wage, this is a solution that has never really worked for us, because the number of federal and state government civil servants, government workers, is infinitesimal compared to the Nigerian working class. And of course, you know that even this so-called minimum wage, many states are yet to be able to meet up with the 30,000 minimum wage. And what you have is that you have inflation. So instead of having minimum wage increase all the time, why don't we have a situation that the average worker can be guaranteed that he will be able to send his child to quality school, he'll be able to access quality healthcare, he'll be able to afford transportation. These are the things that makes life meaningful. It's not the amount of naira in your hand. It is what it can access for you. It is what your status as a working person can afford you that matters. And these are areas that government has not really thought of. So I am not excited about the impending review of minimum wage. Yes, it's a welcome development, but then it only helps a few. And in the long run, it increases inflation. And whatever it was meant to ameliorate doesn't really come through. So that's not a policy that I am really excited about. Like I said, a number of things could have been done before the removal of the subsidies eventually. We are not against the removal. I am not against the removal. But we believe that you do not punish citizens for the failings of government. That is where we have an issue.
And that aspect can go on also, about the floating of the naira. But let's quickly manage our time. The suspension of the CBN governor and that of the EFCC chairman came as a shock, well, even as a cause for celebration to some. But are they both popular decisions when you view them together, or should they be weighed on their merits and demerits individually?
Definitely, there has to be weighed on their merits and demerits individually. And this is why it is important that if something is wrong, it doesn't matter who it is done to. And that's why I said I have mixed feeling about the Emeiele suspension and then, arrest. Was it done in accordance with the law? Was it done in accordance with properly laid down policy of government? Because if that is people have contended that the president will not have the powers to just indiscriminately suspend the CBN governor. This happened during Sanusi Lamido, and we cried foul. So it is still foul now, even though many of us have been expecting that something would have been done about Mr. Emeiele. Now coming to that of Mr. Abdulrasheed Bawa, is quite unfortunate. Everybody who has been EFCC chairman has run into their Waterloo with subsequent government, and this is unfortunate. We were hoping that this current administration will avoid, that banana peel, because what this portends is that government does not like people who fight corruption, do not want it that corruption agencies to really thrive. This is the agency that has been working. We know, of course, the Matawale blackmail of Mr. Rashid Bawa. Now, please get me clearly. We said this during the removal of Magu, and that's why I say when evil goes, condemn it no matter who it happens to. This was the same complaint we made during the Magu removal, that the due process was not followed. We are not saying that it should be, if he has committed any crime, it should be covered up. Yes, proper investigation, no matter what allegation is made against the person, proper investigation. But we know that this that has happened to Mr. Bawas, just like it happened to Magu, is witch hunting by the political class, is witch hunting by people whose toes have been stepped in the course of the discharge of his duty. And it's quite unfortunate that the government fell for that. And this also shows that whoever comes to be the next EFCC chairman will be very careful in going after politicians, because it means that the government will not have your back. If the government you serve does not deal with you, the subsequent one will disgrace you for doing your work. And that is what is happening to the young man. And this is quite unfortunate. I am hoping that, since the president said the suspension is indefinite, I'm hoping that he can resign this decision so that he can give confidence to whoever is going to lead us in terms of anti-corruption fight. When you know that the government that put you there can disgrace you at any time, the people will not put their hearts to it. And this is a job that requires patriots. People will be patriotic, people will be courageous, people will be committed. And it's unfortunate that at the flimsiest allegation, government went after Abdurrashid Bawas. This is not a popular decision.
Interesting thoughts there, Mr. Aribabu, and you know, it could throw off yet another debate on the approach of the commission to investigation. But finally, before we let you go, react to this one, the appointments, the latest appointments of Mr. President. He has taken 8 out of the 20 slots submitted to the Senate. Specifically now, although there's been some talk about the nomenclature, but you know, there's still going to be the appointment of ministers waiting to take their offices. Isn't this going to, you know, shore up the overall cost of governance when you consider that, you know, there are more ministers, you know, to fill posts, and then we also have special advisors?
Well, government have always, I think it's a convention that's come to stay. They will always have special advisors. I'm rather a bit excited about the appointment. Well, some of the appointees we are quite familiar with, and it was expected, Mr. Wale Edo, Mr. Dele Alake, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu. But I also saw some very young people being appointed to very strategic positions here. Some of the appointees I do not know, but why I'm excited is that I am suspecting that Mr. President is going to appoint all sorts of people into his cabinet as ministers. But he needs people who can give him very guided advice, very professional advice. And I think that is what must have influenced the current appointment. So it's a bit exciting. We hope that the people will really fit the bill. You know, but I think it's a sign of, because this is one of the things that undid Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari. He had to rely on Mr. Abubakar Malami and Mr. Godwin Emefiele. And these were no patriots. And they misled him. If the president then, President Muhammadu Buhari, if he had an in-house counsel in the Aso Rock that could advise him properly, he would not fall for many of the things that Mr. Emefiele had him fall for. So this is a bit exciting. These are professionals. They have some young people, accomplished, you know. So it's a bit inspiring. At least this will be the people who have the president's ear. So even if his ministers are not going the right way, the president will not be totally misled on policies because he has people that are chosen by himself.
All right, for you, Mr. Aribabu, the caliber and, you know, qualification of the personnel appointed trumps every other concern. We want to thank you very much for your time and contribution on the program. Mr. Sulaiman Aribabu is the Executive Secretary of the Human and Environmental Developmental Agenda Resource Center. Thank you very much for your time on Lunchtime Politics.
Thank you very much.
President Bola Tinubu is currently meeting with prominent Niger Delta leader and former leader agitator in the oil-rich region, Asari Dokubo, at the State House. Although details of the agenda of the meeting is unclear, it is believed that meeting Dokubo is likely to be part of the president's ongoing consultations with opinion leaders from the Niger Delta part of the country. The president, who had last week reiterated a promise to halt crude oil theft in the country, had also met with other key figures from the region, including former managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Mr. Emeiele, as well as former Director General of the Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, Dr. Dakuku Peter Side. And now to other stories. The former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, has been speaking on the suspension of Governor of Central Bank and chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. While Professor Odinkalu applauds the decision of President Tinubu on the suspension and investigation of Mr. Emeiele, he points out that since every new administration terminates the appointment of the chairman of the EFCC, there is the need to further look into some fundamental issues surrounding the office. Professor Odinkalu was a guest on our political program, Politics Today.
Look, I have no sympathy for Godwin Emeiele. I quite genuinely and honestly believe that quite a good bit of what transpired under his tenure as CBN governor was criminal. You know, whatever fate befalls him within the legal process, I will not shed a tear for him. You see, I've got a problem here. Every EFCC chair, bar none, has come to grief. And so the question one has got to ask is it the job or is it the politics? But something is wrong. It cannot be that every chair of the EFCC since Nuhu Ribadu gets fired. And all we are focused on is the musical chairs and not the idea that something is fundamentally wrong. And so why would anyone want the job if you're guaranteed to be fired? If the country does not want to fight corruption properly or at all, or does not want anyone to do it, then let's scrap the position and scrap the institution. But the idea that whenever a new president comes in, they've got to fire or humiliate or terminate or exterminate the incumbent in the office of the chairperson of the EFCC is offensive in my view. There is something to me that just does not sit right about that. So in many ways, you know, my perspective on Emeiele is quite different from my perspective on Bawas. I'm not convinced that we are treating the position of the chair of the EFCC as it should be treated. Hello.
By the Constitution, I hereby take the roll call of members.
And that's Edo State House of Assembly, which has inaugurated its 8th session at the House of Assembly Chambers, King Square, Benin City, Edo State capital. On Wednesday, Governor Godwin Obaseki issued the instrument of the proclamation of the inauguration in a statement titled Proclamation under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999. He said the first session for the 24-member Legislative House will be held, and proceedings for today's inauguration began at about 10 a.m. with the arrival of the clerk to a busy assembly quarters filled with members-elect and their family members. The clerk sets the tone by taking the roll call of the 24 members-elect.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That as Speaker of Edo State House of Assembly, I will discharge my duties. To the best of my ability.
Meanwhile, Honorable Blessing Agbe-Kabu, representing Owan West, nominated by Natasha Osawaru, representing Ego constituency, and seconded by Bayade Emanku Tusibo, representing Ishan Northeast 1, emerged as the Speaker of the 8th Assembly. Maria Edeko, representing Ishan Northeast 2, emerged as the Deputy Speaker. And the Deputy Speaker and the Speaker took their oaths of office, and the Speaker proceeds with the swearing-in of other members of the 8th Assembly. The Deputy Governor of Edo State, a former parliamentarian, members of the 7th outgoing assembly were also present at the ceremony, as well as other dignitaries from the state government house. And the Plateau State House of Assembly is appealing to the Inspector General of Police to revisit the order on the sealing of local government secretariats, considering that he must have been misinformed on the situation, which does not warrant the action. Members of the House, coming out of an executive session on the matter, told journalists in Jos that the Plateau State Police Commissioner did not give the correct position on the local government governance in the state. The Inspector General of Police earlier on Thursday had ordered the sealing of all 17 local government council secretariats to avoid a breakdown of law and order following the suspension of local government chairmen and inauguration of transition committee chairmen at local government areas.
Our position is properly informed that the IG doesn't reside in Plateau State. It shows that he has been misinformed by the state commissioner who is his representative here, because it is also pertinent to also inform the press that the newly sworn-in transition committee chairmen of the 17 local government in the state went to their respective offices with mammoth welcome by their own electorate, by the citizens in their respective local governments. Only few had issues, and we thought that it will be wise that the police will invite even the sacked local government chairmen in order to advise them to toe the line of dignity by approaching the courts to seek redress, rather than to cause confusion and chaos here and there. So we want to use this medium to call on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to call on the Inspector General of Police to order, to, as a matter of public importance and urgency, to order him to revisit his initial order by giving another order for the immediate reopening of all the 17 state local government secretariats in Plateau State for the smooth running of local governments in the state.
And in Nasarawa State, 3 members-elect of the faction led by Honorable Daniel Ogazi have been sworn into the House by the Speaker, Honorable Ibrahim Balarabe Abdullahi. They are Mohammed Oyanki, representing Doma North, Ove John, representing Kefi East, and Hudu Hudu, representing Awe North. Administering the oath of office during an emergency sitting in Lafia, the Speaker called on the newly sworn-in members-elect to commit themselves to ensuring peace and development in Nasarawa State. Recall that 2 different speakers emerged for the Nasarawa State Assembly when 2 factions in the House, led by Honorable Ibrahim Balarabe Abdullahi and Honorable Daniel Ogazi, conducted separate sittings. The State Governor Governor Sule thereafter threw his support behind Honorable Balarabe Abdullahi, seemingly confirming him as the Speaker of the State Assembly. And away from state assemblies now, a federal high court sitting in Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, has ordered the Nigeria Police, the Department of State Service, and other security agencies involved in removing about 40 vehicles and other items from the residence of former governor of Zamfara State, Bello Matawali, to produce them at the court within 48 hours. The police, along with personnel from the DSS and NSCDC, had on June the 9th this year invaded the former governor's office, the former governor's 2 private residences in Gusau and Maradung, evacuating vehicles and other items following the order of a lower court. The state government later in a press statement said it recovered 40 vehicles from the invasion. The court also gave an order of interim injunction restraining the respondents, comprising the Nigeria Police, the Inspector General of Police, the Commissioner of Police in Zamfara State, the State Security Services, and the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps from taking any further step in connection with the matter and staying all action pending the hearing and determination of the motion. And that's all we have for you on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. Join us again next week for another round of editions of the program. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.